Welcome back, everybody. It's A.B. Stoddard at the Bulwark, and I'm joined by my friend Bill Kristol, co-author of Morning Shots and editor-at-large at the Bulwark. After the election, Bill has been on the run from various undisclosed locations, running from the Trump people, but we're glad to have him with his thoughts on what is turning out to be actually like a huge day, Bill. Donald Trump went to Capitol Hill today to talk to House Republicans, and then he went straight over to meet with Joe Biden, who beat him 4 years ago for the presidency, and to whom he did not offer a nice White House meeting. Joe Biden did offer him one. It wasn't too eventful at the top when there was a camera spray and they had made a few remarks. Trump was awkward as usual, but he was gracious for Trump. He did not answer the reporters' questions. He did not say anything rude to Biden. He thanked him for what is going to be this a very smooth transition, and that means a lot to him.
Appreciate very much a transition that's so smooth. It'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Jim.
You're welcome.
He said politics is tough and a few other things, and Joe Biden just basically said, "Welcome to the White House. Welcome back. We want to make sure that we provide you." So it was perfunctory, and I'm sure there was a lot of drama for both men in their meeting, talking about what's going on around the world and the priorities for the United States and the threats to the United States. That must have been really interesting in the private dining room off the Oval Office, where Donald Trump spent 187 minutes watching a deadly insurrection unfold. But that was sort of the end of it. It's Donald Trump's day. He's having a great time. He brought Elon Musk with him to the Hill, and he's announcing one new hire after another. But very interestingly, right as the former president and the current president and the next president went off into this meeting, we learned that the Senate Republicans have picked their new leader, who will be the majority leader because Republicans have won a majority. And after 18 years of Mitch McConnell's reign, kind of pushed out by Trump or Trump's hold on the party. But, he did decide that it was time for him to step down. He's replaced by Senator Thune of South Dakota, one of his lieutenants, who has been in the number 2 leadership position now. And but interestingly, he did actually face a challenge from another McConnell lieutenant, John Cornyn. But they basically got rid of Rick Scott, the senator from Florida, who MAGA World was pushing for in the first round. So he only got, I think, 13 votes, only 3 more than he got when he challenged McConnell years ago. So that's not a great showing for the fact that Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk were lighting up the internet, trying to push for Rick Scott and to campaign against both John Cornyn and John Thune. What are your thoughts on this? It's a secret ballot. Whenever Republicans have to do something out in the open, they do not cross Trump, but they did today, which I thought was interesting. John Thune has said critical things about Trump. He has resisted the Trumpian direction of the party. It's going to be a challenge for him. But after 20 years in the Senate, it's one that he desperately wanted. I think it's the reason he ran 2 years ago for Senate again. He came into the Senate at 43. He's 63, which is young for the Senate, interestingly enough. But I don't think it's going to be fun for John Thune to be majority leader. What do you picture in the year ahead?
Mostly they should adjust the Senate rules so that all the votes are secret ballots. That would be
Really?
much better outcomes if they could have secret ballots on all the confirmations of the nominees and on legislation that Trump supports and so forth. But it was interesting. I mean, Scott, who was backed by MAGA World, though not by Trump, so it was interesting to know how much difference that might have made, got a quarter of the Senate Republicans. So I think we could say, if you wanted to think of it this way, a quarter of the Senate Republicans are just hardcore MAGA. 3/4 aren't. I mean, one does forget, Tim Miller made this point the other day too, you make this point a lot actually, when you talk to some of these people, how many of the Republican senators, not so much in the House, are kind of, they preceded Trump, just literally, they were in office before Trump. They have other origins in terms of state politics and in terms of the business community that they came from or whatever. And so they're not quite loving bowing to Trump. Having said that, it seems to me Thune could not have won if he hadn't said, no, that thing about recess appointments, that seems perfectly reasonable, whatever he said a few days ago when Trump had said, I need to have recess appointments, the moment they don't, not even the moment they don't confirm anyone, even before they don't confirm anyone, because, it slows things down too much and so forth. So you have to ante that. You have to ante up by agreeing with Trump on that to even be in the game. I think is probably the case, and I think so. I don't know. Am I as a human, as an American, am I happier that John Thune is the majority leader than Rick Scott? Yes. Will it make a big difference in much that the Republicans in the Senate vote for or against, or how they really over even comport themselves? I'm not sure. The one issue that really could make a difference is Ukraine, I think. Don't you think? Because, I mean, that was Thune has been there, if I'm not mistaken, has been there. He's pretty committed, I think. He was certainly voted for the Ukraine aid package and whatever that was in the spring. Everyone in the administration, everyone who got a job in the administration has voted against it, right? Rubio voted against it. Waltz voted against it in the House. And so they were all, that's where the Vance voted against it, obviously. So that's where is Thune, could he possibly stand up for Ukraine against Trump? Or could he persuade Trump to not be as pro-Putin and anti-Ukraine as Trump and Vance might want to be and Musk might want to be? I don't know. I mean, I hope so. That'll be, for me, that's a test. And that's a serious thing. A lot of this other stuff, okay, he's going to cave on some confirmations. I don't like it, but does it change the course of history? Probably not. Ukraine is really a big deal, though.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing him in his first year as leader, and Trump's first year of his second term, in which he's never been more empowered, more popular, considers himself, governing with a mandate. It'd be very hard, I think, for Thune to go out. He'd have McConnell's support, who's just going to be a rank and file member at that point. And I don't know, obviously other people who still support it, but do those other people around him want to make the fight with him, right? And that's the problem, is that you find yourself with diminishing numbers when you stand up now for these things. Even though Mike Johnson did it in April, right? Much to our surprise. I don't know that he's going to do it again. So you made a good point. I think it was today. The days are all blending together, but that we are not to make too much of all these appointments, and that none of them will really make a huge difference. It's more policy than personnel. And you said really the real power players are Trump, Vance, and Elon. Elon has now been named to this. We have no idea if it's a government building or a spaceship, or they're going to meet on Zoom, if it's just going to be him and Vivek Ramaswamy, or a million people doing something to make government efficient. So the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, I guess, is named sort of after the DOGE crypto coin. Elon was very excited last night and said that the merch was going to be fire. So this is all fun for them. And, people are saying maybe it was a way to get rid of them both and get them outside of the real operation of government. But between that and then the more very serious appointments, Bill, of Waltz to NSA, Pete Hegseth to Secretary of Defense, who you talked about this morning, John Radcliffe to CIA, Tulsi Gabbard being DNI, Director of National Intelligence, is really something. And then Rubio, it's like a make Rubio stay up all night this week thinking he's going to be Mitt Romney for the Secretary of State position or something. It's definitely a head fake, but I don't know what you make of that. But these are serious jobs. And I wonder which ones you think are the most important, which these appointments are the most sort of frightening. How are you feeling about them? I mean, pick one.
Yeah, and after saying that we shouldn't obsess too much about every little zig and zag of appointments, I obsessed this morning about Pete Hegseth. But I did stipulate, I believe, in that piece earlier this week, that the power ministries, as they call them in sort of political science, I think, matter in a way that other places don't. And whoever's head of EPA, Steve Miller, or DHS even, Christy, Steve Miller's going to be in the White House. He's a real power player.
Exactly.
But Defense Department is a power ministry, as is the Justice Department. I'd say the two most important, if you think of Trump's priorities and of the ability to bend the rule of law in terms of dealing with American citizens, but also not just American citizens, and really, from my point of view, do damage to American politics, and not just in terms of fundamental damage, not just some policy decisions I don't like. So Let me come back to Hegseth. So I think the Hegseth appointment as Secretary of Defense is startling, and I think people were more startled by it than almost any other of these appointments, which were greeted generally with, oh, that one's a little better than I thought. This one's a little ridiculous, whatever. And I simply think the one thing on Musk, I would just say they're going to keep it outside government, clearly, and they said that. I think this fake, thing that he and Vivek are running, so they don't have to abide by any of the rules that you do have to abide by if you're a government employee, or if you're a government, even if you're a special government employee doing a special task for the president. You have disclosure rules, you have conflict of interest rules, you have FOIA and public notice for meetings and all these things. They're not going to do any of that. So totally unaccountable. Musk, and I think Vivek very much is his number two. That was sort of a courtesy to Vivek, and just so he can do something until he runs for the Senate for Ohio and for the governor of Ohio in 2026. So this is Musk. I don't agree with people who think Trump's trying to sideline Musk or minimize him. He seems very happy to have Musk as sort of a co-vice president with Vance, and as is doing a lot of the heavy lifting that Trump doesn't want to bother with, pushing things in the direction that Musk wants. So I think, and the amount of corruption that could be from this. I mean, can you imagine? Musk is busy deciding this part of the government should be cut, this part shouldn't be, making recommendations to Trump. Some of it could be done by executive action, right? And meanwhile, think if you're a contractor, if you're a business type, if you compete with the government in one area, or if you benefit from the government in another area, how much do you care about that? And I mean, it's really, it's utterly, whatever rules there are that try to minimize that, because stuff in the government has to be competitive bidding and this and that. None of that's going to, I mean, Musk will just go around being an independent power center. So that's, of course, the way he likes it. It's a kind of Wild West form of, I don't know what you call it, capitalism, I guess, or crony capitalism. And he likes that. So I think it's bad. It's going to be bad for the country. It's not, is it fundamentally going to change things? Maybe not. It's just an opportunity for a certain amount of corruption and whims being put into practice as policy. Hegseth at defense is really extraordinary. He's unqualified in a way that way beyond the normal dubious qualifications of some of these Christie Domes and others. I mean, it's really jaw-dropping that he got this job. He's he was served in the military. I got to know him right after he left the military. Came to Washington. I worked with him some. Didn't do a very good job, honestly, running this group Fest for Freedom. It kind of blew up with some financial irregularities and minor scandals, some of which have become public. The group was sort of just retired, and he went on to do other things, and mostly it ended up at Fox, and he's become a big MAGA guy. He started off as a total foreign policy hawk, as did Rubio, as did Waltz. The entire group were once, Weekly Standard, Bulwark types, and now they're quite the opposite. But Hegseth is just, he's never run anything. I mean, you think of the people who've been Secretary of Defense, Bob Gates and Leon Panetta. I mean, whoever. I didn't like Chuck Hagel much, but he'd been a senator for 2 terms. I mean, I liked him. I didn't think he was a great choice, but he'd been a senator for 2 terms. And even under Trump, obviously, Jim Mattis, 4-star Marine general. But take Mark Esper. That was kind of a cut below, honestly, where SecDefs usually had come from. He had been a very senior Hill staffer, national security advisor to the majority leader, and done a good job at that, then done some stuff in corporate America, come back and been Secretary of the Army for the first years under Trump. So I'd say normally that's a job pattern that sets you up to be the number 3 person maybe in the Defense Department, not the number 1 person. It was a bit of a leap for him. He did a good job, actually. But again, Esper is to Hegseth as I don't even know what, as Babe Ruth is to some 220 hitting, shortstop who spent, a year and a half in the major leagues. I mean, it's such an incomparably, Hegseth is both not a very impressive person, I would say, and doesn't have a very impressive actual track record, and just isn't up to that job. So what does it mean? I don't know. I guess Waltz runs national security policy from the White House. Steve Miller butts into a lot of things. God knows where people like Kash Patel end up. But mostly, Hegseth has made it. We'll see if he makes it. I'll come back to that in a minute. But will have made it to this height entirely because of sucking up to Donald Trump, which means he will be a total loyalist. And I guess I wrote this today that I think, insincere opportunists who then become mindless loyalists can be dangerous parts of the authoritarian project. They don't feel quite as dangerous as the true believers, the Kash Patels, the Steve Millers, the kind of ferocious, glare that they have. But they can do a lot of very, very, very bad things. And, if Pete Hegseth is Secretary of Defense and he hears that someone in the White House is interested in the Defense Department doing X, it's the one thing he'll kind of go out and try to get done. Now, defense is a huge agency and military is complicated, and maybe there'll be some barriers to getting it done. But then there was also news yesterday that they're thinking about an executive order to, in effect, have review of military promotions for general officers and override them and get rid of people by some board that Trump presumably, or Hegseth, I guess, would appoint. So suddenly all the barriers that are built in, some of them are maybe almost a little excessive almost, of insulating the military from some aspects of political control and bias and so forth, those just collapse very quickly. So I think the Hegseth point is a big deal. I think it should be opposed. I hope Democrats and the media and others cause a huge ruckus about it and do some investigative work and see what his background really is and say that he's unqualified. I said this morning that I thought Roger Wicker, the incoming Republican senator from Mississippi, who's the incoming chair of Senate Armed Services, I said I was confident he was appalled by this. I thought it was possible he might even oppose it. Within 1 hour, this is how much power I have, the Bulwark has, he came out saying, well, that's fine. He's fine with Hegseth. Now, maybe he's thinking privately, enough stuff will blow up that Hegseth would have to be withdrawn and he doesn't have to antagonize Trump by saying that. Or maybe he just figures he'll be SecDef and that's what Trump wants. And I'll kind of try to work around him a bit and make sure see if I can help get some decent people at the second and third tiers of the Pentagon. But I don't know. This worries me. The power ministries, justice and defense above all, also DHS to some degree, and the intelligence community. I think those really, that's what, when you have a coup, those are the agencies that the coup plotters go after, right? And Trump could afford to have some goofball at EPA and not worry too much about it, as long as they're responsive to the business community. When some donor to Trump calls up and says, hey, I want less regulation of this, that's all they need there, right? But defense and justice are different, and the intelligence community. And they're putting a little bit less ideologically committed people in charge than I expected, but they're putting total opportunists in charge. And as long as they have the ideologically committed people in the White House and know what they want to do, I still think it's very dangerous.
When you mentioned someone like Wicker, he was probably pressured to say something today because it was in a few places in press accounts. It was noted that not one Republican senator had said anything affirmative about the choice of Hegseth. So maybe it was time for him to, someone gave him a call from Mar-a-Lago. But down the line, and you're right, maybe he thinks that the media will do it for them. Someone else will always do it for them. The Democrats, Hegseth will have a problem, he'll withdraw from consideration, over with, choose your battles, this type of thing. But do you think that we know what they want to do? There's a serious risk of a brain drain at the Pentagon because they want to just go in and start ripping people out who had anything to do with any DEI initiatives. And they're going to de-woke the military. And that's what that's what Hegseth talks about all the time. And that's Jim Jordan, that's MAGA. That's what you've heard for years now, is that they have to go in and de-woke the military. So do you think that Republican senators have any power anymore to try to lay over some kind of oversight, accountability, just that, okay, Trump will let you have this, but it is the largest department, is the most serious responsibility. This is really fun and all, but if he goes in there, we're going to have to have these people and an understanding that he's going to be guided. He's never run anything. He's going to have someone looking over his shoulder. I don't even know, that they have that influence anymore, or that they would try to use it, that they would dare step forward and try to exercise any power after what we've seen. You mentioned a few days ago, the soon-to-be Senate leaders just willingly handing over their authority as a separate co-equal branch of government and the prerogative of the Senate to run it, the chamber the way they're supposed to, and to confirm appointees in their own process, not because the administration wants to do this or do that with this person or that when they feel like it. I just doubt so much that they're going to exercise any influence or authority as senators. What do you think? I mean, in terms of these appointments, it's like, do they pick one that's the most egregious and then they make that their fight? Or roll over for everything. You know that they're worried about someone like Hegseth.
You would think. So I think, look, I don't know. I mean, I think the more fuss the Democrats and the media can cause, there might be some pressure on the Republicans to turn against one of them, or privately to tell Trump, can't you pull this one? And maybe that would happen. I think, but no, I have no confidence in their ability, in their willingness or ability in a way to make much of a difference. I would also say something at the Pentagon, I don't think we've really discussed Vance yet. I think Vance cares a lot about some of the DEI stuff is probably gone, and they're going to fire, move people around and try to get rid of a lot of that. I assume they'll fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, whom Hegseth actually has been very critical of, and
yeah, he said that
has been very critical of. That's the custom has been to leave that person in till his 2 years expire, which I think is normally in the fall, as I recall. And of the even numbered years, I think, and then then they do make sometimes a replacement. Sometimes they give them a second 2 years, but there's sort of a sense, as with things like FBI director, that there should be continuity. It shouldn't all change on January 21st. They're going to fire the FBI director, incidentally, on the first day of Trump's presidency. So all these institutions that are semi-insulated, you might say, from pure political pressure, that's all going away. But what worries me the most about DOD, the DOD does a lot. And like Ukraine, they do a ton of cooperation behind the scenes and legally, but, second and third level, not a huge amount of publicity, intelligence, communication, cooperation, and other things with Ukraine. And I think it's been very helpful to Ukraine. Vance really does not want Ukraine to be able to keep fighting that war. I don't know whether he and Musk in particular actually want Putin to win, but they certainly don't want Ukraine to be able to fight. I don't know if Vance is smart enough to go look at who's doing what in the Pentagon and try to stop some of those things and order Hegseth to do it and provide some decent, I suppose, some aides who are a little smarter than Hegseth and harder working to go make sure this happens. So again, the degree to which some of these MAGA priorities, such as undercutting Ukraine and helping Putin, obviously the stuff with using the military for the for the deportations of immigrants, a lot of these things, I think Vance, Hegseth, I'm not sure has the ability to sort of figure out how to do these things, but Vance will be in the White House and they'll have plenty of other people on the outside who know about this stuff helping them, and Hegseth will be the vehicle, I suppose. So I am very worried, and senators won't love it, but they're also anti-immigration, and they're some of them are anti-Ukraine, and they don't want to take Trump and Vance on. So I don't know. This first week, I should have brought home to people, in my opinion, what we failed to bring home to voters over the last several months, which is the second term is not the first term. That first week after he won in 2016, total surprise, chaos, who was running what, Reince Priebus, chief of staff, Steve Bannon also at the same level as chief of staff, total, everyone jockeying, fighting, leaking. It's been pretty disciplined. I mean, there's been a little bit of jockeying and leaking, but not much. And they rolled out this stuff fast. And they obviously, as you say, the one as most controversial was Hegseth, and they promptly got Wicker, 10 o'clock, 10:30 the next morning to support him. So I'm worried. They're not assuming that they'll necessarily simply step on rakes and blow themselves up. They'll do some of that because it always happens, but they won't do that unless a lot of pressure is put on them. And I guess my final point in terms of the Democratic opposition, Democratic with a capital D, but also little d, very important that Trump not have an unimpededly successful first 2 months during the transition. If he just coasts through this and everyone's kind of giving up preemptively, and he takes over on January 20th, and it's all, everything's been great, everyone's confirmed, there are no big problems, nothing, a couple of little things came up in some background investigations, immediately dismissed by everyone. He's got his day one agenda lined up with the J6 pardons and the immigration mass deportations, and God knows what with Ukraine. I mean, that's extremely dangerous in my view. I think from the point of view of opposing Trump, imposing some defeats, or at least some near defeats and some costly fights on him, is extremely important over the next 2 months.
All right. Thank you, Bill. I look forward to talking about the next unfolding nightmarish chapter with you next week. Everyone, keep it here on the Bulwark's YouTube channel. Subscribe to the Bulwark's YouTube channel. We have stuff coming in all the time, and we will see you next time. Thank you.